AITA for reminding my ex that I'm only responsible for our kids, not all of his kids. Our kids live with me, but he found a girl with kids and decided we should be one big family. Before watching the video, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd also really appreciate a like and a subscribe. The most interesting comment will be included in the next videos. Thank you to each and every one of you. Enjoy watching. I'm Nora, 33 years old, female. Divorced for 3 years now from my ex-husband, Mark, 35. And we share 2 kids, Ethan, who's 10, and Lily, who's 8. They live with me full-time, not because of any legal drama, but because Mark was never consistent enough to build real custody. He'd miss weekends, cancel last minute, or show up 3 hours late like it was no big deal. So, by default, I became the anchor, the one they could always count on. I won't lie, it was exhausting. There were nights I'd cry on the kitchen floor after putting the kids to bed, wondering how I was supposed to keep doing this alone. I worked, I cooked, I handled homework, nightmares, doctor appointments, all while Mark floated in and out of their lives like a visiting uncle who thought buying them happy meals counted as parenting. The thing about Mark is, he's charming, always has been. That kind of boyish smile that makes people forgive him when they shouldn't. I forgave him too many times during our marriage. Late nights with the guys, bills he swore he'd pay but didn't, promises to the kids he never followed through on. After the divorce, I swore I wouldn't let him disappoint me anymore. But I couldn't protect Ethan and Lily from that same cycle. Then came Jessica. She's 32, has 3 kids of her own from 3 different fathers. I don't say that to judge. Life is messy, but Jessica wore it like a badge of honor. Her whole vibe was super mom influencer, the kind who posts stage photos of color-coded lunch boxes and captions about resilience, while the house behind her is chaos. She and Mark had been dating a couple of months before. He suddenly caught this blended family fever. That's when he started pitching me this utopian dream. We could all work together, create a real village for the kids. You should treat Jessica's kids like your own. I almost choked when he said it, because here's the thing. I barely have enough energy to raise Ethan and Lily the way they deserve. My responsibility is to them, not to cover for Mark's midlife fantasy of playing Brady Bunch with a woman who thought group chats and Facebook posts equaled parenting. And yet, when I pushed back, when I said, "No, Mark, I am not responsible for kids who aren't mine," it was like I'd committed some moral crime. That's when the game started. The game started with Jessica's big idea of creating what she called a family village. One random Tuesday morning, I woke up to a group chat notification. It wasn't just me, Mark, and Jessica. It was me, Mark, Jessica, and all 3 of her kids' fathers, like men I didn't know, had never spoken to, suddenly grouped together as if we were some PTA committee from hell. Jessica's opening message was this manifesto-length text about shared responsibility and how modern families should embrace the village model. She wrote things like, "We're all connected now. It's not about who's biological, it's about who shows up. Let's build something beautiful together for all the kids." I stared at my phone in disbelief. These were strangers, literal strangers, and she expected me to treat them like teammates in raising not just Ethan and Lily, but her kids too. So I did the most sane thing. I left the chat immediately. Apparently that was the gravest sin imaginable. Mark called me within minutes, his voice sharp with anger. "Why would you leave? Don't you care about the kids? Jessica is trying to create something amazing, and you just stomp on it." I snapped back. I care about my kids, Ethan and Lily, Not yours and not Jessica's. I didn't sign up to raise her children. He shouted so loud I had to hold the phone away. He accused me of being bitter, of trying to sabotage his new family. Bitter? Please. I was too tired to be bitter. I just wanted my boundaries respected. That night, Jessica posted one of her trademark passive-aggressive rants on Facebook. A selfie with her 3 kids on the couch captioned, "Some people don't understand that love makes a family, not blood. Sad how selfishness gets in the way of children's happiness." I didn't comment, but mutual friends sent me screenshots. I could feel my stomach twist. She wasn't just delusional. She was trying to publicly paint me as some evil step-monster who refused to support the children. And Mark fed into it. Every exchange, every pickup or drop-off for Ethan and Lily turned into some lecture about how I should open my heart. But then it escalated. The next visitation day, I opened the door expecting Ethan and Lily. Instead, standing there was a little boy I didn't recognize, Jessica's youngest, alone, with his backpack. Mark had literally dropped off someone else's child at my house without telling me. I froze in the doorway. Ethan and Lily were nowhere in sight. Just Jessica's youngest, clutching a worn Spider-Man backpack looking confused. Where's Ethan and Lily?" I asked. The kid shrugged. "My mom said I'm staying here." I swear my blood went ice cold. I called Mark immediately. He answered all cheerful, like he'd just done me a favor. "Hey, yeah, figured it'd be good for you to spend some time with him too. We're all one family now, right?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Mark, you cannot just leave Jessica's child at my house. I am not his parent." "Where are our kids?" He sighed like I was being dramatic. "Relax, Nora. Ethan and Lily are with Jessica right now. They're having fun. Just watch her little one for the evening. It's no big deal." No big deal. He literally swapped our kids for hers, like it was some sick barter system. I told him he had 5 minutes to get back here or I was calling the police. He cursed at me, called me selfish, but sure enough, he came back. When I handed Jessica's son back to him, I bent down to the boy's level and told him softly, "This isn't your fault. You're going back to your dad now." His little eyes looked so scared. That image still makes me sick, because Mark and Jessica were treating kids like trading cards. I thought that was the end of it. But a week later, he tried it again, this time at school pickup. The teacher actually called me, confused, saying Mark had listed me as an emergency contact for Jessica's middle child. I had to explain through gritted teeth that I wasn't authorized nor related. That poor teacher sounded so uncomfortable, caught in the middle of a soap opera she never asked for. I drove straight to Mark's place that night. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel the whole way. When he opened the door, Jessica was standing behind him with her arms crossed, smug as hell. "Why are you making this harder than it needs to be?" Jessica chirped. "We're trying to build something. You should be grateful you're included." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Grateful? You're dumping your kids on me without asking. That's not inclusion. That's exploitation." Mark's face turned red. He slammed his hand against the doorframe so hard it rattled. "You think you're better than us? You think you can tell me how to parent?" "No," I said, steady but shaking inside. "I'm telling you to parent your own kids. Don't ever leave Jessica's children with me again." But of course he didn't stop there. The very next move? Mark filed in court to lower his child support, arguing he had 5 kids in his household now. When I got the court notice, I honestly thought it had to be some mistake. But no. Mark had actually filed a motion to reduce child support, claiming his financial obligations had increased because he was supporting Jessica's 3 kids. I sat in that courtroom staring at him, wondering if he'd completely lost touch with reality. The man who barely paid on time was now wanted to pay less for Ethan and Lily because he was playing house with Jessica. The judge didn't waste much time. She flipped through the paperwork, her eyebrows climbing higher with every page. Finally, she set it down and gave Mark this look, half disbelief, half irritation. "Mr. Taylor," she said, her voice sharp, "child support is for your biological children, Ethan and Lily. Your personal choice to take on additional dependents does not reduce your legal obligation to the children you already have. Motion denied." Mark stammered, tried to argue. Jessica sat behind him in the gallery, whispering furiously, her face twisted in frustration. At one point, she even stood up and tried to speak. The judge shut her down instantly. "Ma'am, you are not a party in this case. Sit down." I'll admit, it was satisfying watching the judge slice through their nonsense like that. But at the same time, I felt sick. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about Mark trying to rewrite reality, to force me into being part of their fantasy village, whether I wanted it or not. After court, things turned ugly. Jessica stormed out first, muttering loud enough for me to hear, "Some people just don't care about kids unless they came out of their body." I clenched my fists but kept walking. Mark followed me into the parking lot, still fuming. He slammed his car door so hard it echoed through the lot, then shouted across the spaces, "You'll regret making me look stupid in there." Parents picking up paperwork at the courthouse stopped to stare. I felt the heat rush up my neck, not just from anger, but humiliation. This was the man I once loved, the father of my kids, screaming at me like a lunatic in public because I refused to raise children who weren't mine. That night, Ethan and Lily came home from their dad's visit looking pale and restless. Ethan wouldn't even take his backpack off before blurting, "Dad and Jessica were fighting all weekend. Her kids were crying. We just stayed in our room." I pulled them close, my heart breaking. They were caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked for. And then the strangest twist. Jessica's other exes started reaching out to me. One of them sent me a DM. "I'm sorry she dragged you into this. I should have warned you. She uses people." Another straight up confronted Mark in public. The supermom blended family image Jessica had been projecting started to unravel. And that's when Reddit, I realized I wasn't just surviving their chaos anymore. I was ready to push back. The days after the court hearing felt like living in some surreal soap opera. Jessica's whole family village project was unraveling in real time, and I barely had to lift a finger. First came the apology. One of Jessica's exes, father of her middle child, messaged me on Facebook. I had never spoken to him before, but his words came across raw and embarrassed. "Hey, I'm sorry she pulled you into her fantasy. She did the same to me. Tried to make my new partner play dead. I should have warned you." Then the real bomb. Another one of her exes, the oldest child's dad, blew up on Mark publicly. I wasn't there to see it firsthand, but half the town was buzzing about it. Apparently at a kid's soccer game, he got right in Mark's face and said loud enough for the sidelines to hear, "You're letting her manipulate you into screwing over your own kids. Wake up before she burns your life down like she did mine." I almost felt bad for Mark. Almost. But then Ethan told me how Jessica screamed at her ex right there in front of all the kids, throwing her water bottle so hard it splattered across the bleachers. No one left that field thinking she was a super mom. And for the first time in months, I felt the tide turning. But Mark wasn't done being reckless. The next time he had visitation, he tried to guilt trip Ethan and Lily into helping out with Jessica's kids. Lily, my sweet 8-year-old, came home clutching her stuffed rabbit like it was armor. She whispered, "Dad said we should babysit while he and Jessica had a date. I didn't want to. Ethan told him no, and Dad got mad." I swear my blood boiled so hot I could taste metal. Those weren't just bad decisions anymore, they were dangerous. My kids were being treated like free labor in a house filled with yelling adults and confused children. So I started documenting everything, every message, every passive-aggressive post, every time Ethan and Lily came home with a story about chaos at their dad's house. I wanted a record, not to use against Mark unless I had to, but to protect myself and my kids if things escalated. And then sweet revenge slipped into my lap like fate itself. One Saturday, Jessica went live on Facebook. Yes, live. She was ranting about fake mothers who abandon children emotionally, clearly aimed at me. But in her background, clear as day, you could hear her kids screaming and crying with Mark's voice roaring over them. It was chaos, broadcast to her entire momfluencer audience. Within hours, the video was clipped, shared, dissected. Jessica's curated image cracked wide open. By Monday, Ethan's teacher gently asked me if everything was okay at his dad's house because some parents had seen the video. And that's when I knew. I didn't need to expose them. They were exposing themselves. Update wow. I did not expect this to blow up the way it did. I honestly thought I was just ranting into the void about my ex and his delusional girlfriend, but apparently a lot of you have been through similar blended family nightmares. First off, thank you. Some of your comments had me laughing through the tears. Special shout out to the person who suggested I start invoicing Jessica for babysitting services every time Mark tried to dump her kids on me. Tempting. Others hit hard, like the people who reminded me that my only responsibility is to Ethan and Lily, full stop. That was exactly the validation I didn't know I needed. So here's what's happened since the court hearing and Jessica's infamous Facebook Live meltdown. The fallout has been intense. Jessica's exes are completely done with her now. One of them actually sent me a screenshot of their group text, the one she used to coordinate custody with them. He basically told her point blank, "Stop dragging Nora into your mess. She doesn't owe you a thing. Leave her alone." It was weirdly satisfying to see someone from her side finally say what I've been screaming for months. Meanwhile, Mark's golden image of the perfect blended family is crumbling. His neighbors, people who used to wave and chat, are apparently keeping their distance. I guess screaming matches in your driveway on having random kids passed around like packages will do that. And here's the kicker. Ethan told me the other night that he doesn't even like going to Dad's house anymore. He said it's too loud, too crowded, and nobody listens. Lily chimed in, saying she just wants quiet time with Dad like before Jessica. Hearing that broke my heart and made me furious all over again, because I never tried to cut their dad out. I just wanted him to be a dad instead of forcing everyone into Jessica's chaos. So here I am, sitting with this mix of anger and relief. Relief because Jessica's little empire of lies is crumbling all on its own. Anger because my kids were dragged through to the mess in the first place. Some of y'all told me to go nuclear, post receipts, drag them publicly, maybe even get CPS involved. Trust me, those ideas are tempting. But watching Jessica's self-destruct has been more satisfying than anything I could have engineered. Still, I've been thinking, maybe there's a way to make sure the lesson really sticks. Not out of spite, but because I need Ethan and Lily to feel safe. And maybe, just maybe, a little poetic payback wouldn't hurt either. Because if Mark wants to play house, then I'm about to show him what happens when the house burns down around him. They said I was petty when I started planning it. They didn't hear me, because no one ever listens until something loud enough breaks the silence. I didn't want to out anyone for sport. I wanted the chaos stopped. And the only thing that had ever worked on Mark was public spectacle. So I built one. I called it a Kids' Day, and kept the title boring on purpose. Community park, lemonade, snacks, parents, neighbors, school teachers, a few friends who'd watched the circus for months. I invited everyone who'd ever been witness to Jessica's Facebook rants, the exes who DM'd me, a handful of parents from Ethan and Lily's school. I even put a line in the invite to celebrate healthy boundaries and safe spaces for our kids. It sounded like the kind of thing Jessica would love to hijack. Of course she did. The morning of, I felt like someone walking into a storm with an umbrella made of paper. I had the group chat screenshots printed. Jessica's manifesto about the village. Mark's messages where he bragged about swapping kids like favors. The live video clip where you could hear children crying while she lectured me about love. I had a slideshow queued on my phone and a small speaker. I had copies of everything, carefully labeled. Mostly I had the faces of Ethan and Lily in my pocket like talismans. Jessica arrived early, hair perfect, 3 kids trailing like a messy halo. Mark came later, still wearing the defensive grin that always made me want to slap it off his face. He walked around like he owned the picnic tables. I started with something easy. Stories. I asked a neighbor to talk about the time she'd heard yelling through the wall. I asked Ethan's teacher to say, gently, that kids were asking why families fight on Facebook. These were small arrows, but they hit. People shifted on their blankets, phones were out, faces curious. Then I played the clip. Jessica's live folded into the warm air, her voice sharp, the kids wailing like an alarm. People's expressions changed. A woman 2 tables over mouthed, "Oh my God." Someone hissed, "Is that kids?" The air felt thin. Mark's jaw tightened. I didn't waste breath. I read her messages out loud, her folksy declarations about shared everything, and the line where she suggested I step up or step aside. I said each word slow, letting neighbors' eyebrows do the work I couldn't with law papers. I told a few of her exes I'd invited them, then I let them speak. 3 men walked up, quiet at first, then furious. One explained how Jessica had used his name in custody arrangements without telling him. Another produced a text where she'd coached Mark to list Nora as an emergency contact. The oldest ex. He lost his temper at a soccer game, walked straight to Jessica, a finger in her face, and told the story everyone had been too polite to repeat in public. She snapped. What came next was ugly. Jessica screamed. Not the composed, performative kind. This was raw, guttural. She threw her water bottle. It hit the picnic table hard enough to send people ducking. Mark lunged forward as if to defend her. He slammed his fist into the wood so hard the table splintered. A little kid, one of Jessica's, started crying and ran to a stranger's blanket for comfort. A man shouted for someone to call it. A woman recorded everything on her phone, me included. Mark turned toward me, face purple, eyes flaring, and screamed, "You set me up!" He shoved at the table and it toppled. Paper and plastic flew. Kids shrieked. He tried to shove past me and his jacket caught in the barbecue grill behind him, tearing fabric with a ripping sound that felt like the last thread of whatever truce I'd had with him. A neighbor grabbed his arm. He wrenched free and stumbled into his car, slamming the door so hard the horn blared like an accusation. Jessica's world imploded in slow motion. Exes yelling, neighbors backing away, a dozen phones recording her meltdown. She grabbed her kids and fled. No stage photos, no carefully placed captions, just the flailing mess of someone finally losing their narrative. Her Facebook feed filled with uploads minutes later, shaky, unedited clips from strangers. I stood in the middle of it, hands trembling, heartbeat loud as a drum. Ethan and Lily clung to me, eyes wide. Ethan whispered, "Did we do something wrong?" And I wanted to break down on the spot and tell him how angry I was, how stupidly proud. Instead, I folded them both into my arms and murmured, "No, you did the right thing by being you." That night, Mark sent a text that tried to sound conciliatory but landed like glass. "You made me look stupid." I stared at it until the message blurred. For the first time since the divorce, I felt a small private satisfaction, not because I enjoyed their pain, but because the facade that hurt my kids had cracked. The rest of the fallout would come in calls, whispers, and the slow, legal unpicking of excuses, but in the park, under the sun, I finally watched them implode on their own terms. The meltdown at the park was the breaking point. After that, everything shifted. Jessica's supermom image, gone. She went radio silent on Facebook for weeks. And when she finally reappeared, it was all vague quotes about rebirth and removing toxic energy. Translation: she was back at her mom's house, no longer playing blended family queen. Mark called me 2 days later, not to scream, not to guilt me. His voice was small, almost unrecognizable. "You were right," he said. "I wasn't thinking about the kids. I was thinking about myself." For a long time, I didn't know what to say. I'd been bracing for another fight, another lecture. Instead, it sounded like a man who'd finally run out of excuses. Since Jessica left, visits have been different. No forced family village. No babysitting duties for Ethan and Lily. No extra kids shoved into my house. Just Mark and his children. They go bowling, watch movies, eat pizza on the couch. Simple. Quiet. The way it should have been from the start. Ethan told me last weekend, "It's calmer now, Mom. Dad listens more." Lily nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit, adding, "He doesn't yell so much." I almost cried right there in the car. Do I forgive him? Not really. Not yet. He let our kids live in chaos just to chase some fantasy. But I can acknowledge the difference. And I can give him this. He's finally showing up as a dad. That's all I ever wanted. As for me, my house feels lighter, peaceful. The group chats are gone, the Facebook dig silence, the constant dread of what Mark and Jessica might pull next finally dissolved. I still keep my guard up, once burned, twice shy, but I don't wake up every morning wondering what new fire I'll have to put out. The sweetest revenge wasn't the park confrontation, or watching Jessica's image collapse online. It's this. Sitting at my kitchen table with Ethan and Lily, homework spread out, laughter filling the room, knowing I drew the line and held it, knowing I protected my kids, knowing they're safe. Boundaries are a funny thing. People call you selfish for setting them, until the same boundaries are what keep everything from falling apart. I didn't win custody battles or shout anyone down in public. I just refused to carry weight that was never mine. And in the end, that was enough. The drama is over. My house is peaceful. My kids are stable. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.